Awesome. Hey everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. If you are able to turn your camera on, that would be super great, just so we can put names to faces. Awesome. And if you guys in the chat could go through and just drop your name, what school you go to and what year you are, that'd be super great for us to get to know you guys a little better. Awesome. Cool. So I see we got some folks from Trinity, we got some Northeast, we got Baylor. Okay, awesome. So we got a good mix of people around. And I know people are going to be coming in and out, so totally good. Um, Cool. So, hey everyone, welcome to our Making the Most of Your Summer session. This is our final Accelerate session of the year. Super excited to have you guys. Just for some context, the way um, we've sort of ran these sessions is it is half content, but really an ample amount of time for you to really ask questions. We have a lot of really great people for you to get to know. So we'll jump to the next slide. And would love to just introduce myself. So my name is Sahil Maherli, based out of Austin, Texas. Professional, I'm a recruiter at a consulting firm. Prior to that, did a bunch of different things. Worked at Dell, we're doing learning development. Then I worked at Cision, where I was in implementation consulting, and then was even a career coach at UT. So a bunch of really good opportunities, and I'm really excited to jump into it from there. And what we'll do is we'll jump to the next slide and we'll sort of talk through on what is Accelerate. So what we've essentially sort of seen and understood is each university sort of kind of runs professional development their own way, and there's so many really great individuals from across all these different schools that we want to highlight, and instead of replicating, we want to sort of kind of work together to sort of think through what's top of mind for everyone. Um, and we're for coming into the summer, what we want to do is sort of think through, hey, look, there's a group of people who are ready to go guns blazing into the summer, sort of kind of think about what's going to be happening. And then there's some who are still figuring out their summer plans, and that's completely fine as well. And we're going to be chatting through, if you're on either side of the ball, how to jump into it. So we'll go to the next slide and would love to sort of introduce our three. So we'll go in order of Sid, Jose, and Adam. Would love for you just to kick off just who you are, what you've been up to the past few years, sort of any previous experiences you've had, maybe what you'll be up to this coming summer, or if you're still figuring it out. And then we'll throw a fun question in as well, that it's ACL season in Austin with like the lineup about to drop, that if you had to pick your own music festival, who are your top three artists that you want to see live there? So Sid, I'll kick it off with you.
That'll be a fun question. Hey guys, my name is Sid. I'm a student at the University of Michigan. I joined AK Sci here the second semester of my freshman year. Um, I have I'm studying biology, economics, and data science. I've done a host of things, everything from policy work, both on the lobbying side and on the legislative side, and then also spent some time at some startups, some venture accelerators and venture firms, and then more formally did a summer of finance in New York City last summer. Um, Currently figuring out grad school versus going back into finance. Um, so a little bit up in the air right now, but we're still trying to figure all of that out. As for music festival, I think. Geez, I would love to see Giveon live. I think Bruno Mars would be fun. And then uh ASAP Rocky would be cool.
Got it. Jose, what about you?
Hey everyone, my name's Jose. I'm a junior at Trinity University. I'm majoring in business analytics, and I was president of the New Pi chapter from fall 23 to spring 24. In the past, I interned actually at Dell Technologies over at their Austin office in their global operations division, and I'm an incoming summer business analyst at McKinsey and Company for this summer. In terms of my music lineup, first thing, my favorite band of all time is this small prog rock group based out of Dallas. Actually, they're called Polyphia. They're really cool. So I'd have them. Pitbull is my favorite concert that I've ever been to, so gotta have that one there. And then I've always wanted to go to a Coldplay concert, so I'd throw that in there just to check that off the bucket list.
Got it, got it. Adam, what about you?
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Salen. I was the previous president of the Alpha Kappa Psi chapter at Baylor University. I'm a senior and majoring in finance and management. Most of my internships have been in the commercial real estate space, both in Orange County, California. So I worked at ABBA Real Estate Group and then Matthews Real Estate Investment Services. I accepted a full-time offer from them my sophomore year. So my junior summer, all I did was backpack through Europe and kind of travel internationally. And as of recent, I decided Texas was the best state to be in. So I revoked my offer and have been looking and exploring other opportunities in Dallas, and most likely will be signing next week at a Goosehead Insurance Company. So that's kind of my story. As far as my lineup goes, I would really love to see the Electric Light Orchestra. I think that'd be like so awesome to see them in person. And I think my favorite concert ever been to was with Joey Badass, so I would totally want to see him as well. And I guess closing it up, maybe something like a Radiohead or something like that.
Awesome. Um, Super glad. So, and again, the part I want to call out, you have three really great individuals, three super unique backgrounds, right? So you have your big, you have somebody who's going to New York, you have somebody who's working in the real estate space, somebody who's worked in tech. So really just feel free when you guys get the chance to ask questions on the tail end. If you do have a specific question for somebody, feel free to ask as well. Why don't we jump into it and go to the next slide? And want to just sort of hit on what's going to be how we're going to be thinking about it. So if you didn't land an internship or if you chose not to recruit for the summer, we'll sort of kind of be chatting through on what's really important, and then how to sort of kind of leverage this summer. A lot of recruiting for summer of 2026 already started, right? So for those who are recruiting investment banking, as you guys know, most of those interviews are even already over. For firms like consulting, I know OW and KPMG had their apps due this past week. I know McKinsey, Bain, BCG are over the summer. So you're going to see a lot of really quick, fast pace moving for recruiting and thinking about it from there. And then what we're going to do is sort of kind of spend some time and hear from them in terms of, hey, how did I really make sure I had a successful summer opportunity? So why don't we jump into it? And look, the key thing that we really want to make sure everyone understands today is that you're playing the long game here, right? So even if you're a freshman, what am I doing to really make sure I land something post grad? It's not necessarily just for the summer ahead, but what are some of those foundational aspects? And I think that's one thing to really think through in terms of how am I thinking about skill building, networking, and then setting yourself up. So we'll jump into the next slide and jump into it. So cool. So the key thing is at the end of the day, when a recruiter asks and tries to look at, hey, what were you doing this past summer? Your biggest takeaway should be I was working on myself. And this can mean a variety of things. This can mean you're getting ahead in classes. This could mean you're developing a skill. But it's really is, do you have an intentional story and a narrative that you can share with somebody is going to be something super top of mind. So the thing to sort of think through is this recruiting cycle has been super tough, right? Like we know that jobs are at an all-time low right now in terms of new jobs being created. We're already seeing some firms in the big four already pushing offers by 6 months for start date. So we're seeing the impact in DC specifically about federal jobs being cut left and right for new grads. So there is a lot of ambiguity right now, and especially if you are an international student, you are going to be feeling some of this tightness in the economy, and it's important to think through on how to frame it and how to leverage your network around you. So let's jump to the next slide and get really tactical with it. One of the biggest aspects we really want to hit on is, are you developing skills specifically from a quantitative perspective? No matter what industry or aspect you're going into, there is going to be a part where certificates are going to play a major role. But with that as well, you want to be very intentional on, am I doing this A for myself? Am I doing this B for a job in front of me? Or C, am I doing this from an organization that is going to receive my resume. So a really good example is there's this website called Forage that isn't listed on here. Every time you complete a Forage course, it actually sends you a resume to that company through their program. So I'll drop the name in the chat as well, just so that way you're able to think through that. The other aspect that I really want to hit through is really understanding that a lot of these companies are currently giving out specific certificates to make sure that you're able to be impactful in the workforce. So a really good example of this is this one called Salesforce Trailhead, which will give you a certificate on different aspects of Salesforce. So if you want to work in Salesforce administration, say you want to work in Salesforce implementation, they're already pre-prepping college students to go in and enter these industries. So the first thing that you really want to think about this is, I am here, the job that I want is here. What is the skill in the middle that I need to really make sure that I'm able to achieve that, right? Getting an Excel certificate, getting something like that of that will be helpful for the job itself. But what you really want to think through is, hey, how am I sort of sticking out in the recruiting process going through this? You can notice this mostly with students who are in like the CS and data world, doing leak code and all that stuff is going to be super critical for you. But for those who are more of the traditional business students, the key thing really want to hit on is that you need to sort of figure out what is that one skill or certificate that might actually be a needle mover, and it's going to differ company to company. So look at the top 25 companies you want to work at, or the top 20 roles you want to work at, and is there anything consistent that you could see from there? Why don't we jump to the next slide? When it comes to certificates, this is the part that I really want to hit on, is that there are going to be some companies that have these really esteemed programs that I would recommend picking up regardless, right? So these are 5 that I put together to really sort of say that, hey, no matter if you're studying finance, accounting, marketing, anything like that, these are going to be 5 that are going to be actually really helpful. Specifically Microsoft Excel. Everyone should know Excel inside and out. If you don't know how to do a VLOOKUP, if you don't know how to do a pivot table, if you don't know how to do macros, like you're going to need to know that at some point level, right? So using that opportunity to go from there. The second one is Tableau. Tableau is the #1 most requested skill needed after Excel this year in the market for anybody who wants to work at a Fortune 500 company. Data visualization tool. Tableau offers a student certificate as well that I highly recommend sort of looking at and going from there. And then the third are the other 3 that are sort of in the line of marketing. So whether you want to go for a HubSpot certificate, whether you want to go for Google Data Analytics, whether you want to go for Google Analytics, this is going to be something that's super critical. Most jobs now in the marketing world just require straight up the Google Analytics certificate. So it's one that I really recommend for you to start thinking about, even if you're a non-marketing student. If you want to go into consulting or things like that as well, having this type of a certificate at least shows that you're applying yourself and going from there. So why don't we jump to the next slide real quick? And I want to sort of kind of hit on what should I be doing along with this in parallel. So look, at the end of the day, building your portfolio and freelancing are going to be 2 things that are going to really help you from there. I think everyone, for the most part, knows what a portfolio is, but it's essentially your work that is similar to the work you want to do that you've been able to create. So this is going to be projects or anything like that as well. I want to focus more on the freelancing or gigs, and I want to sort of explain a few of these that are really, really high impact. So I'm going to start from the bottom with Parker Dewey. Parker Dewey is an organization that is based around micro internships for 3 to 5 day periods or 1 week internships for freshmen and sophomore students. This could be paid or unpaid, but essentially it's these companies who go through and say, hey, I need this task done. We will pay you $100 or $400. And it's a really great opportunity for you to invest your time and really go from there. It's one of the top platforms where students are saying that they directly were able to develop the skills they need. And oftentimes it's going to be very parallel to the job market in itself. The other part that I want to hit on is this concept of Fiverr as well. This is going to be really great opportunities for you to do more gig type work and really going from there. But the one that really we've seen a lot of students get a lot of opportunities with is freelancer.com and TopTool. These are really great remote projects that specifically startups put out there for them to actually find talent. So this is actually sort of a twofold experience. One is you get the experience in figuring out what you want to do, but oftentimes startups will use websites like freelancer.com and TopTool to say, hey, we want to see somebody who could do this. We're actually looking for somebody part-time, but we don't want to just put out a posting. So let's see on who bites. Let's see who can do some work well and going from there. So highly recommend sort of signing up for platforms like these throughout the summer to make sure that you're able to really gain some understanding. There's even a lot of companies right now, specifically startups, that are needing people to play with their machine learning platform and just really able to go from there as well. Yeah, that's another really great one as well. Somebody dropped in the chat. Extern.com is another fantastic one. But awesome. Why don't we go to the next page? Uh, and look, the key thing that I really want to hit on is that summer of 26 recruiting has already arrived, right? So are you meeting with your career coaches on campus? Are you already refreshing your LinkedIn profile? Are you thinking about platforms that help you practice your technical interviews or behavioral interviews? The key thing, which I would really recommend, is if you're like, hey, I don't know when apps will open for for the company I want to work at. You use the time right now to look at when their 2025 apps opened up. Most companies will stay primarily in line unless they move up. So for example, we know that Dell will open in September. We know that PwC will open in August. So really use this time to sort of kind of start building out some of these opportunities for individuals going from there. And then lastly, the summer is the best time to coffee chat with people. You're going to find a lot of people who will be bombarded by students in the spring and the fall, but the summer is a time where students are reaching out less. My recommendation is always reach out on a Thursday. That's always the best way to get email responses. And then always try to send people an email instead of a LinkedIn message. You could use really great websites like hunter.io to find what a company's email template is and then reach out to them over email rather than sending a LinkedIn message. Awesome. So what we're gonna do now is jump to the next slide and really think through hey, look, we want to think through what do I do when I think about this internship experience? How do I really go from it from there? What I am going to do is I'm going to ask on some of these folks to sort of kind of help out. So if we go to the next slide, I think the key thing is majority of companies have brought back some type of in-person or hybrid model that works really well. One of the biggest things I recommend is go into the office as often as possible, be around the people you're going to be working with. There's a whole different atmosphere and experience. A lot of these companies, such as specifically banking, will only bring back 50 to 60% of their interns, if not less. And they are looking for the people who are standing out, not only in the work they do, but also in the office culture itself. Sid, I know you were in New York last year. Would love for you just to chat through on what worked well, what didn't work well when it came to that office experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing about being in the office is one, just having a great energy, right? Smile on your face. Everyone's tired. It's always early in the morning. So if you have a lot of energy, if you're always excited, if you're always ready to take things on, that is a really big value add because for a lot of these groups, for a lot of these companies, you're the youngest person in the room. And being the youngest person in the room oftentimes means that you have more energy and more youthful exuberance than anyone else. So it's really important to bring that into the workplace because people really feed off of that and they love seeing that energy and they love helping students. I think the other thing in regards to maximizing your internship experience and your summer experience broadly is to just be really proactive about everything. So I think your first or second week in the internship, it might be a good idea to maybe uh send a couple calendar invites just for like quick 15-30 minute coffee chats or virtual chats with your manager, with a couple other team members, maybe some of the junior team members as well. And just come prepared with some questions, right? About the role, about their journey, about some of their takeaways from the job, things they like, things that they don't like. I think LinkedIn Learning has some resources on networking foundations that might be helpful when you try and structure your outreach or structure those conversations in your head. But you should really have a goal going into that conversation and think about what are some of the things you want to take away from that conversation. I think another thing is it's important to make a good impression, and it's important to make a good first impression because you never have a second chance at a first impression, right? So always be 5, 10 minutes early. Make sure you're always well dressed, well groomed. Um, have your talking points ready, right? Make sure you know what the agenda is for the day and what the group is working on, or what some of the broader objectives are. Um, it's always good to keep your direct manager in the loop. So when you finish a task, make sure that you're just proactive about sending them an update so they don't have to reach out to you and take time out of their day to figure out what's going on. Just say, hey, finish this. These were my takeaways. Let me know what else you got for me. Is there anything else I can help with? Things like that. I think a lot of the learning that you do just comes from observation. So you're sitting in on meetings, even if you're not on the agenda, just to sit in and learn. I think those are great environments to just have a doc running open on your computer and have some meeting insights, right? Like any interesting jargon or terminology that you came across that you weren't aware of before to look back on later, or maybe it's taking meeting minutes, or maybe it's some of the different stakeholders that are in that meeting, or how the team tends to make decisions, right? All really important takeaways and elements for you to understand the company, the job, the team. And I think it's also really important to just make sure you seize the spontaneous opportunities that come your way. So if a team member says, I wish I had time to do something, that's a great opportunity for you to sit there and say, I can take that on. So just be the first person that people think of when something urgent comes up. And always ask for feedback. I think that's another big thing is maybe not every day, but at certain points, maybe halfway, quarter way through the internship, just say, go to your manager or someone else on the team that you've worked with and say, hey, like, I've loved working with you. I was wondering if you had any feedback for me, or anything you think I could do differently or that might be more helpful to the team. Um, but those are some of the things that I tried or that worked for me or that worked for some of the other kids that I interned with over the summer. You don't have to do all of these things. You don't have to do any of these things. Um, but just some of my own takeaways from being in person.
No, I think you hit on a bunch of really good ones. I think the one part that I would really sort of tell people is for those who are working virtually and stuff like that as well, like really just be aware that there's so many opportunities of even like going to a co-working space, going to a campus, anything like that as well. Just to find those moments of opportunity and really just make it an effort to try to be there in person with your team whenever you can. And it's completely okay if your internship is virtual as well, but really want to sort of kind of emphasize that we've noticed at a lot of companies, students talk about that the decline, the lack of skill sets they have because of working virtually. So even though that startup might be a really cool experience, or hey, you might be able to do your internship while traveling through Europe, there is going to be a gap in your skill set, and you should be aware of that as well. Why don't we jump to the next page and sort of just hit through on some of the key elements of where does goal setting really come in. I think the part that I really want to hit on when you're thinking about building a routine and stuff is every internship is going to be different. And it's really just thinking through on what makes the most sense for what is your goal as an individual, what's your goal for the team, and what is your goal from looking at this from a program itself. Like what do they want their interns to get out? Jose, I'll pass it over to you to sort of kind of hit on some of these key elements that you went through and going through your head with setting these goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I want to touch on really quick at the beginning is, even though you might have an internship for the summer, and that's going to be really huge with respect to your professional development, the summer, if you have an internship, can also be a really great time for you to work on your personal development. So that's, things like personal health, making sure your mental health is in check throughout the summer, things like that is really important that you keep at the forefront of your mind throughout the summer because you're going to be working really hard and doing great things at your internship. But this is also, for many of us, if this is your first internship, this is also going to be your first taste of that kind of adult 9 to 5 life. So when you get off of work for the day, that time that's left in the evening is for you to do with as you please. So it's important that you're really intentional about your time and setting your goals and just making sure that you're keeping your health at the forefront. So one big thing that really worked well for me is just having a really clear set of, I like to call them kind of non-negotiables, if you will. So it's things that you don't really want to sacrifice no matter what happens. And this kind of goes both ways because, as Sahil was mentioning, depending on what industry you end up in or what sort of company, your work-life balance is going to vary quite a bit. So you need to be really intentional about deciding, okay, so one thing I really don't want to sacrifice is my personal health. I want to be able to go to the gym 4 times a week, 3 times a week, whatever. So you need to be really clear with that with your employer, your manager, your team, whatever, and make sure that they understand that this is a huge priority for you and that you understand that that's a huge priority for you as well. So, even when the work is getting tough or maybe you feel a little bit lazy, you kind of have to remember those goals that you set for yourself, those non-negotiables that you have, and be intentional with those throughout the summer. So that's a big part of balancing your work and your life balance. But one thing that I will say is building effective habits that will work with you throughout the summer, whether it's for exercise or if you have a hobby that you really want to keep up with over the summer. It's going to be, taking on an internship is a big shift in your way of life, your typical schedule. You're not in classes for a couple hours throughout the day and then you do homework and you go to the dining hall and so on. It's a bit of a different dynamic because you're in the office the whole day, and then once you're out, that's completely up to you. So making sure that you have a clear to-do list, or you're using a planner, maybe you're using a planner app, for example. And I mean, this can be scaled from all the way, the small tasks, like if you need to make sure that you're drinking water throughout the day, get yourself a water tracker app. If you want to have an exercise tracker app, or if it's for food, whatever you need to kind of keep yourself organized and stay intentional about the things that really matter to you is really huge. And I mean, also breaking down your goals into smaller, more manageable chunks, because you might have this picture of yourself where, okay, I'm going to get out of the office and I'm going to work out, and then I'm going to do this other thing, and then, I'm going to be in bed by 10 p.m. If you just, wake up one day and all of a sudden that's your routine, it's going to be really easy for that to break down over time, especially if, you miss it one day, it can be really difficult to build it back up. So kind of building those small, easily repeatable habits and letting them kind of compound over time is the most effective way, and kind of let your schedule build itself over time. So one thing for me while I was at Dell is I knew that I wanted to make sure I was staying in shape, going to the gym as often as possible, going for a run after work every day. So, maybe I didn't start just immediately working out every day as I was still kind of settling into my new routine, cooking for myself, things like that. It was all a big change. So I just started running maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and then let it build up over the summer as I got better and better at figuring out what my routine looks like. And also, maybe not every day, like Sid was mentioning, but with certain periods, you want to kind of look back and say, this has been working really well for me. I've been doing a really good job of getting to the gym and eating right, but maybe I've been sacrificing, I don't know, maybe I like playing guitar and I haven't played guitar in a couple days. And it's not about punishing yourself, but more recognizing what you've done and kind of rewarding yourself for it. And that way you can kind of build up those healthy routines that let you balance both your professional development and your personal development over the course of the summer.
I think Jose hits on a bunch of really great points, and I think the one part that I do want to provide some realism as well is you're gonna work a lot of hours pretty soon. Whether you're working a 40-hour job, whether you're working a 70-hour job, anything like that as well. There is gonna be this trade-off of, hey, this is not like school where you could say, hey, I love to work out in the morning, so I'm not gonna schedule any classes before 11 a.m. Like there is this realism where it's like, hey, look, you are signing up for the job you want to do, and it's important to ask these questions when you're going through the offer process. But really, it's for example, like if you have to take a flight on a Monday night and a Thursday night, you just lost 2 nights of the week to go work out, right? So a lot of this also comes down to this realism that, hey, there is going to be an adjustment period, and how are you sort of reflecting on that as well? Why don't we jump to the last slide, and really just sort of kind of chat through, um, how am I thinking about my own branding? How am I thinking about these relationships I kept, during my internship, after my internship, and then how am I also presenting myself? Adam, would love for you to sort of kind of take this, own it in terms of what's worked well for you. What's been the advice that you've gotten?
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, three things. Starting with the first one about building a professional network. I don't want to read through these bullet points. I know you guys know how to do that, so I'll just kind of talk about my own experience. But it's all about really actively seeking out opportunities to meet new people in the industry, as well as actively being there in the office every single day, networking with the people that you're working alongside. When you're building your professional network, whether you're in an internship or you're not in one, if you're in office every single day, reaching out to the people that you're on projects with, right? Asking questions, kind of like what Sid said, and being there and present to kind of be the best intern you could possibly be. You really want to put yourself in their shoes. How can you make their life easier and do those things, right? Now, if you're not in an internship, you take that summer time that you have, or whatever extended period of time you have without the internship, to reach out and make those connections, whether they be on LinkedIn or through friends or through family, and reach out and try to connect with them with some meaningful questions. And that's only half the part of the equation. The other half is maintaining them, right? So not just making the connections, but then how do you nurture them after and maintain those relationships? Doing this, a lot of people struggle with, a lot of my peers and even myself included, about staying in touch with people you've had these relationships with. I've, worked many jobs in the past where, I use those references from 3, 4 years ago, and those people still, have gleaming reflections about me working with them because I was able to maintain those relationships with prior bosses or peers, years down the line. And that never ends. That's something you guys will be doing the rest of your life. And starting now in college is especially how you have those meaningful relationships in the future. A lot of people I've talked to, even post grad, I'm a senior going into the corporate world. A lot of people and my friends that have graduated 2, 3 years ago, they still stay in touch with me and a lot of people in the future, a lot of people like in our fraternity, and they've been able to give us opportunities, right? And they've had those meaningful relationships we've been able to keep. And kind of bringing us to the last point about crafting a personal brand. This is really just making sure you're being consistent, professionally, in person, as well as online, which is something I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit, just based on my previous job search experience. A lot of people now don't really see their online image as something that jobs look after. And that's something that you should definitely, put on the top of your list as far as what you're putting out there is going to be out there forever, right? So really be meaningful about, your online presence, even on LinkedIn, keeping your LinkedIn updated, being active on there is a great way to see opportunities, and know that people are looking out for you. But I don't want to talk too much about those three things. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, I think we'll be answering at the end. And I'd love to kind of talk about my own experience, my internships as far as those things.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Look, I think the key thing that all of them can say is they had a mentor that helped them through the process, and they're happy to sort of kind of give back now that they're old and wise. Thank you guys again for joining us tonight. Jose, Sid, Adam, thanks again, and have a good night, y'all.